Artificial intelligence is remaking marketing as we speak, and if you're a marketer, you can either get up to speed or get left behind. The choice is yours, and really, it's a no-brainer. Join Geoff Livingston and Greg Verdino as they explore the latest AI news, trends, tools, and ideas that are creating the future of marketing today. This is No Brainer, an AI podcast for marketers. Oh, and just in case you're wondering, yes, I am an AI. Take it away, Geoff and Greg.
Hey, this is Greg Verdino, and you are watching or listening to No Brainer, an AI podcast for marketers, and I am here as usual with Geoff Livingston. What's happening, my man?
How are you, my friend?
I am doing well. We have an interesting, I think, and evergreen episode because I think the topic we're going to touch on today certainly affects marketers right now, and consumers probably even more so than marketers at the moment. But I think it's going to be something that will play out again and again and again and become more and more of a focus as AI advances and as the year goes on. And what I'm talking about, just to ease the suspense here, is deep fakes. And obviously we can speak about misinformation, disinformation, the entire, I guess, epidemic almost of deep fakes that seems to be rolling across the internet right now. But we're going to keep it focused, I think, for the most part, because there are actually some very real things playing out today that have deep, pun intended, implications for marketers. I'm getting a thumbs down for saying, for using that particular pun, but I don't care, Geoff. It's a Friday. We are recording this on a Friday. We don't normally record on a Friday, but because of some travel schedules next week, we wanted to get this one early. It is Friday the 26th of January, but if you're listening to this, it's probably almost February. All right, so let's kick off with the idea of deep fakes, almost brand fakes, that is emerging now in the world of celebrity endorsement. So obviously,
and politics, right? We don't want to talk politics today, but
absolutely,
we saw some of that this week.
Yep,
as well.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll see. We did see some of that. I'm sure we'll hit some of that. But if you're not of the political sort, even then, right, we're starting to see that celebrity endorsements, which are a tried and true advertising and marketing tactic, right? Everyone's got their ad with Shaq or whatever in it. And it is, I think, 80% Shaq, right? But nonetheless,
he's making his money, man.
Right? Absolutely. Good for him. But pretty much, every brand knows the power of a celebrity endorsement. Celebrity can be defined fairly broadly, right? It might be a traditional celebrity. It could be a new age sort of internet influencer. But nonetheless, it's a tried and true tactic. But what happens when deep fakes come to the world of celebrity endorsements? And this is something that we have seen in the real world over the course of the past week or two. And let's start there, Geoff. Why don't we kind of dive into some of the stories that we're watching on that front?
Yeah, I think the most notable one is Taylor Swift. Anything Taylor goes crazy, as we know. And just a word to all those man-children out there that are hacking on her for pulling down the Kansas City Chiefs. Grow up. Not true. I mean, come on, man. This is awesome that you have the world's biggest pop star in football. I mean, the NFL's got to be loving it. And it's fantastic for everybody. It's fantastic for the sport. But with Taylor, what happened was somebody put up an ad with her toting a La Creuset ad. And even though it was reported and Meta said that they had taken down the deep fake, a survey of the library, I believe that was done by the New York Times, if I'm correct, found 160 celebrity deep fake ads on Meta. And as you had pointed out in the show notes when we were getting ready for this thing, this is a company that's going to be deploying AGI or some sort of AI in some manner to the world now and ensuing over the next decade to billions of people. So it doesn't give you a lot of comfort. YouTube also removed thousands of fake Medicare ads featuring, you got it, Taylor Swift. I'm not a Swiftie. I just want that on record. I don't think I could recognize 10 of her songs. But Steve Harvey, Joe Rogan also had ads. And then we also saw a Joe Biden deep fake that went viral during the New Hampshire primary. So we're seeing all sorts of deepfake attacks from celebs and frankly regular people, which don't really necessarily pertain to brands, but we are seeing a lot of them tax brands, and that has some major implications. I think also one that was brought up was last year's Tom Hanks had to make a statement that he wasn't representing a dental plan. I mean, like this is a problem, not just for the celebrities, but also for people that trust them.
Exactly, right? It's hard to say in a lot of ways whether the brands are being targeted, whether the celebs are being targeted, whether it's just an attempt to pull one over on the consumer, spread misinformation, cause confusion. Certainly everybody in the process gets hurt, right? It sort of muddies the water because all of a sudden, as a consumer seeing one of these messages, you have to scratch your head and ask yourself, is this a legitimate brand engagement? Is this actually the celebrity who it's purported to be? And can I believe this? And I feel like we're going to start to see, as these things become more and more prevalent, as they get more and more press, as more and more deep fakes are proliferated across the internet and social sites and wherever else, you're going to have people actually asking the question about legitimate brand campaigns, right? Where you're looking at something that perhaps, I don't know, brand X paid handsomely for a sponsor, for an endorsement from a given celebrity, and people are looking at it saying, how do I know that this isn't fake? I've been burned before. And I think that there's the potential for a lot of damage and backlash, not even just in that sense, but just imagine you're Le Creuset, right? You have to do damage control now and have to think about, what do I do about this? I remember there was another one of these brand fakes back a while ago that I think was specifically targeted at Mr. Beast because it wasn't even presented as an Apple promotion, but the idea was that Mr. Beast was giving away an iPhone. And he ended up, if I'm not mistaken, actually giving away the iPhone to save face, protect his own personal brand, right? But not every brand is going to do that depending on what the promotion is. And it's potentially very problematic, I think. What do you think?
I think it's massive, right? Like, also, you see now these parody Instagram accounts going up where people are using these Hey Gen technologies or basically superimposing celebrity faces on top of theirs.
Right.
Like Sylvester Stallone. I think there's a hilarious Keanu account that's out there. And I've never seen Keanu look so skinny. But, it's just the reality is this is depreciating from the brand. And in some cases, people can get away with it from a copyright perspective because they're making parodies, right?
Right. But there's a difference between a parody and what essentially amounts to a malicious attack, right?
I would like to think so. However, unfortunately, Greg, I have lost faith in the American consumer's ability to delineate truth from fiction.
Well, not to delineate the two. I agree with you 100% there. I think that there is a moment of reckoning coming around sort of media literacy and digital literacy.
Huge.
We've underinvested in those skill sets, and it's going to come back and bite us, I believe.
Really quick, too, because this particular trend is going to shove it down everybody's throat.
Right.
And so I think we're in a real problem moment.
Right.
And I do think that people that are making their money off their name, particularly in the entertainment industry, from musicians all the way through, like Snoop Dogg, all the way through to the Actors Guild. And this is what the Screen Actors Guild beef was all about with the motion picture studios. I mean, they do have reason to be afraid. I think they are going to lose value. I don't think anybody's going to trust anybody.
Right. And unfortunately, if you're a marketer, that comes back around to brands. And, trust in corporations is near an historical low. I'm not sure what the latest numbers are, but certainly we see a lot of data from, Gallup polls and Pew Internet and stuff like that, that indicates that corporate trust is a challenge. And, this kind of thing ends up doing nothing but exacerbating that. So if every time you run an advertisement, your consumer is asking, can I trust the claims? Can I trust that this is really the spokesperson? Can I even trust this is legitimately an advertisement for the brand it claims to be for?
I mean, this is going to go further, right? Like we're going to see deep fake gecko ads. you
Right,
know?
absolutely, absolutely, no doubt about it. So and that kind of, I guess, in a way, I guess, leads us into the second flavor of this kind of thing. So I don't know if you tracked this when it was happening, but for people who are not country music fans, there's an artist named Jason Aldean.
This is
Now,
horrible. We're
to
doing
be
Swift
clear,
and now this. I mean, oh,
it's all country. I guess she's not country anymore, but that's where she started. So I still think of
she's
her as a
country.
country girl.
I mean, all these Swifties are country. What's
But
up with that,
anyway,
man?
so Jason Aldean is a country artist. And to be clear, he's known for having right of center political views. His audience tends to be more conservative. So it was no surprise, I suppose, when he released a song, quote unquote, released a song called Go Woke, Go Broke, in which he took direct aim at Disney and Target and Bud Light and all of the brands who had been under fire or in the spotlight, at least over the course of 2023, for espousing more liberal policies. Now, the trick is, the song wasn't his. The voice was AI generated. It was convincing, and it spread like wildfire on TikTok. So even here, a conservative country artist had to make a statement and be clear about the fact and do damage control around the reality that he was not directly taking on all of these brands. Now, this is certainly deep fakes, right? Aldean was deep faked, but really the objective seems to be to put this negative narrative about Bud Light and Disney and Target onto like hyperdrive through this sort of TikTok distribution, let's say, right? So this is a little bit different though, right? This is not somebody pretending to represent those brands. It's somebody essentially detracting, right? Attacking those brands. So it's the opposite of an endorsement. It's a disparagement, basically. This is essentially what's known as a narrative attack. And narrative attacks long predate artificial intelligence. But the problem is artificial intelligence makes it easier to create a narrative attack that's convincing, that's compelling, and that spreads like wildfire. So essentially what a narrative attack is, and every brand needs to understand this. A narrative attack is basically when, it's a malicious attempt to change or the narrative or spread a false narrative about a brand or a person or whatever. So, we've seen these kinds of things for years. Geoff, you and I, as two old men who have been through this kind of thing before, and I'm sure some of our listeners at least remember the golden day of the social media crisis. And of course, social media crises still happen. But if you remember Dell Hell, right, where Jeff Jarvis went, on a rampage, and kind of took on Dell, who was not addressing his customer service issue, or United breaks guitars, where United broke a guitar, right? One negative social media post sort of spring rolled. That's the word I'm thinking of. Spring rolled is not what I mean. But it took off, and
Yeah.
right? But now it's so easy to do it because imagine you don't need celebrity firepower in this case. It could be somebody using a generative AI like ChatGPT to churn out.
Worse is that we have audiences that are primed to accept it, right?
Right.
I mean,
That's
basically
true.
now we're in this highly politicized tribal world, and I know tribes is another social media concept, but where everybody's so polarized and delineated and ready to hate the other
Right.
group, ready to put them down, ready to spread disinformation and trust that disinformation as factual, that it's really easy to smear a brand. And when you look at the Aldean situation there, I mean, one thing that really struck me was that basically they were hitting on missteps that the brands had had. For example, the Bud Light ad with the transgender woman, I believe it was, or was it transgender man? I forget. But, obviously they took a risk. They walked back from it once they received some blowback. We could go into the strengths and weaknesses of that whole thing. I definitely think they made a mistake. Once they were out there, they should have just stayed out there and said, like, look, Bud Light's for everybody. But, I mean, whatever their situation was, they put themselves in a position of weakness with that particular tribe.
Right.
And that tribal attack against them is basically somebody that still hates them for that. And they're trying to expand that. And we do know in this world that a lot of people that are architecting these attack types of campaigns understand the value of attention and virality.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so that's the real issue, is that when it hits, you've probably got 24 hours to clean it up. And as a result of it, otherwise it's going to propagate and propagate and propagate, because we're now in this world of aggregation.
Right.
Everything gets aggregated 50 times.
Yeah. So, and, if you think about the sort of, relatively speaking, the slow roll of the old social media crisis, you had to, somebody got angry about something. They wrote a blog post, made a video, whatever. It may or may not have caught fire at that point. And you might have gotten 100 blog posts. Maybe it hit the mainstream news in a market or two. And it was relatively slow compared to the kind of thing you might see today where, 1 million ChatGPT generated articles just distributed all at once, and now you've got to figure out how to clean that up. And that's the real implication for brands, right? You need to be ready for it.
It becomes part of this narrative, right? I mean, that's the other thing. It's kind of like this crazy. What's that group? The one that's kind of out there, the right wing one that's. The pizza shop one. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. I don't know the name of the organization, but
right. So QAnon. It's like QAnon crazy, where people are just, and I'm sorry if you listen to QAnon, but please research more. I mean, it's like where once it becomes part of that narrative, it's just accepted. And so there's no coming back.
Yeah.
That's why the crisis communications plan has to be built, has to be off the shelf. And, get the lawyer out of the situation pretty quickly. Once you have the statements pre-approved by legal, and get them pre-approved before the crisis happens, you got to be ready to roll, throw this out there and say, like, look, this isn't true. We value everybody's business. We value this community's business. We value everybody's business. We would never say something like this. And, people should take the time to look at our corporate ethics whenever they're available. We'll put them on our front site so that folks are aware of what's happening. I mean, the ability to respond quickly is everything. And this is part of governance. It's part of policy. It's not just AI. I mean, it's just the way everything moves so quickly now. If you don't have a crisis plan and you're a significant company with major business with not just consumers, but B2B, I mean, I just feel sorry for you. You're really asking for it.
Yeah, and, I think what's interesting here, and it's worth noting, is that we've all seen it before, right? If you've been in marketing or communications, whether it's internal communications or, public relations or investor and analyst relations, right? We've seen this play out before. And what's interesting to me is I think with each new wave of marketing innovation, a lot of the lessons learned tend to get left behind. And if there's if there is an Uber lesson in this particular trend or pattern or theme or whatever you want to think of it as, it's all of the best practices that you've built for traditional crisis communications, for social media crisis communications, need to be at play here. You can't assume that just because we've now moved into this brave new world of artificial intelligence, that none of those old rules no longer apply.
Well, on top of it too, like having gone through enough of these, like when I was with Zoetica, we had SeaWorld as a client, and that whole Blackfish situation happened. Cami Hoyza was running that account. Poor Cami. I mean, Cami is a pleasant, handsome person. But man, the week afterwards, when she showed up on video camera, she looked like Bill the Cat, man. That was like the worst social media crisis I've ever seen. We even had Bob Barker going off on us. I had Michael Arrington go off on us. These things are not fun. They're really horrific moments of terror and anxiety for brand communicators. You don't want to be on the wrong side of this. You want to be prepared and ready to go. Because scrambling to figure it out it's just too late already.
Absolutely. And what makes it worse is when it's something that is believably true but patently false, which is almost the sort of the beating heart of generative AI in a lot of ways, right? That's the one thing that everybody has known for a year now about a tool like ChatGPT is that it is utterly convincing in its authority, even when every single word it spews may be false.
Oh,
And
100%.
and that's where this gets dangerous because if a brand does something wrong, then in some ways the brand kind of deserves what it has coming at it. The brand still needs to be smart about how they address that crisis, et cetera, et cetera. But if you make a mistake, you've made a mistake. This can happen now in a way where the brand hasn't made a mistake. The narrative has no basis in fact, and it still becomes the dominant narrative about the brand because it's so prevalent and people today are so prone to believe these kinds of things.
100%.
Which I
100%.
guess brings us in a way to fake
Fake
news.
news. Woo! Back again. What's old is new, right? 2017. Okay. I thought we forgot about that year. Look, NewsGuard identified more than 600 AI generated sites designed to appear like legitimate news or information sources. Now, look, there's a lot of stuff that people write that's fake news, but now we really have bots creating fake news. And that's a huge, huge problem, right? Like what is their aim? What's their goal? Why were they set up? Or is it just, let's see what the Gen AI can do? We're not really telling people what's going on. It's transparent. You can unleash these things on stock reports, quarterly reports, and have a financial news feed. And maybe it's good, maybe it's not. Maybe you disclose that because certainly without that, you wouldn't get the information you're looking for. Whatever it is, this creates a digital literacy problem. This creates a brand problem, particularly when you have something that can't be held accountable, really, because it is just a random site.
Yeah, and in the case of what NewsGuard in particular is looking at, because I'm sure there are many, I would say, good-hearted initiatives to use AI to generate legitimate information that would be incorporated into a website. Whether it goes well or not is another story.
Speaking of an aside tangent, did you see that Sports Illustrated basically laid off 80-90% of its staff, and they were trying to use AI to generate stories?
Absolutely,
and it turned
right.
into a
That's
huge
been
controversy.
right.
Very
That's been a
related,
huge
right?
controversy. Now, I mean, I think for better or for worse, I feel like most of these, I will say, major media companies, significant websites, brands like Sports Illustrated or MSN or BuzzFeed or whomever, who have attempted to replace human writers and editors with AI, have almost universally misstepped. And that's something that's going to play out in the media space, and we'll see what the implications are. But in terms of what NewsGuard is looking at specifically with these 600 sites, they are designed to deceive. Now, that doesn't mean that they're designed to even necessarily sway your opinion as a reader with mis or disinformation. There is no filter whatsoever. Basically, it appears that the AI is generating whatever the AI is generating on any topic. There have even been some examples where an article will literally just reproduce a prompt or reproduce something where the AI is saying, I'm a large language model and I'm incapable of blah, blah, blah.
It's
The
like literally ChatGPT unleashed, right?
right. The quality is totally
Garbage.
immaterial. But because they appear to be legitimate websites and they rank in Google, they do attract eyeballs. Now, what's the value in attracting eyeballs? Attracting ad dollars. Because all of these sites are then being registered to participate in programmatic ad networks like Google Display. And because they meet whatever targeting criteria have been set, they end up on your ad buy. And that's
Right.
the real problem for marketers, because now a whole chunk of your ad buy is being siphoned away from legitimate media sites to these sites where they deliver no value for you as a marketer whatsoever. And that's a real problem. And I know a lot of agencies and the brands themselves who are using these kinds of programmatic networks, of course, are creating block lists. But the challenge here is that you might block a site or two or three or 10, but these websites proliferate so quickly
Right.
and are becoming so prevalent that it becomes very difficult for the buyer to stay on top of them. It's almost something that needs to be solved at the seller level, but I don't believe we're there yet. And it's becoming really problematic, and brands need to at least be aware of this. If you're spending ad dollars and you're using a programmatic ad network of any kind, odds are some of your money is going to these kinds of AI generated sites. And that creates a budget issue and a brand safety issue.
Right. I mean, and the brand safety issue is one that we've seen play out most publicly with Twitter or whatever it's called recently with an IBM.
Yeah.
Part of me wonders how much of this is going to get worse with the lack of cookies too, where people are going to get into more spray and pray situations with their ad buys and just let things go. And I really see this is going to have some larger challenges with that dynamic coming into play. It's kind of like the confluence of two storms.
Right.
And as a result of that, I do see these kind of cheaper, taboola types of networks having lots of challenges for advertisers. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not they are able to navigate this and continue to deliver value for their brands.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, I think you've made an astute point there, believe it or not.
Shocking.
Which
on
is
the no of the brainer part.
Which is also right, which is also kind of the way these things, it's almost like right place, right time.
Got you giving the fireworks, dude.
For those of you who are listening on audio, Jeff's managed to, I don't know if it's on purpose or inadvertently, set his the AI in his camera system to set off fireworks behind him every time he gives a thumbs up. So that's not annoying at all. It looks like it's not working anymore. There it goes. Now it just kind of, his entire head was engulfed in flame for a brief moment.
I'm like that horrible 4-year-old kid that finds a horrifically annoying toy.
the fire hat with a real siren. But what I was saying is a lot of these things are happening at the intersection of two almost like tsunami waves, and they're crashing together, right?
The cookie thing is massive, right? It's massive. We probably need to do an episode on that alone.
Exactly. We've got to look into that and kind of try to make some sense of it. But media is in a state of upheaval in general, and that includes media buying, traditional advertising, a lot of changes, including obviously the deprecation, decommissioning, or whatever of cookies, the rapidly shifting dynamics of the media marketplace, all that kind of stuff, and for AI to be essentially enabling the propagation of fake media sites in a way that's never been seen before just adds fuel to that fire. And the same is true of these earlier trends around narrative attacks and the sort of brand fake celebrities and stuff like that. Again, these are happening at a time where anything that might be a brand challenge, whether it's reputational or whatnot, is now kind of on hyperdrive because of the potential for bad actors to use artificial intelligence in ways that it, maybe wasn't
fluid, right?
It's lighter fluid, exactly.
Let's take a break before we get too far.
Absolutely. And when we come back, we're actually going to, I think, begin our second half on a positive note, because a lot of these technologies, of course, do present legitimate opportunities for brands. So we're gonna dive into that a little bit when we come back.
Everybody get happy. All right, everybody, we are back. Forward-thinking brands are already experimenting and using deepfakes. What do we mean by that? Let's call them synthetic celebrities. Basically, people that are digital humans, or perhaps somebody that's a model or somebody inside the organization that's licensed their likeness to the organization to be used. And some of it's working out well and some of it isn't. There's some ethical implications. Let's get into it. Greg, you want to talk about it?
Absolutely. So a while back, I'll say we, even though Geoff, you and I have only officially partnered in Cognitive Path for the past month or so.
Right.
Before that, when I was going solo, and it is available on our Substack, thecognitivepath.substack.com. Be sure to subscribe to that if you enjoy what we do here. You'll really enjoy what we do there better because it is filtered and actually proofread and a little bit less off the rails and off the cuff. Anyway, way back, probably middle of last year, we did publish a blog post about some of the ways brands were using synthetic celebrities, and some of the campaigns were actually quite effective. So, and these might be campaigns that anybody who follows the space knows. If you're a marketer, you read the trades, these might be like, oh yeah, I know about that, but not everybody will. So Virgin Atlantic, for example, they have a celebrity partnership with Jennifer Lopez, and they produced it was a TV campaign, a video campaign. I believe it ran both online and on the air, which featured.
I love that ad, by the way.
Which featured Gen AI, get it? Jennifer Lopez as an artificial intelligence, and it was a very Virgin ad, right? It's Virgin Cruises. It had that Virgin ethos, right? It was very tongue-in-cheek, a little bit edgy, but basically the premise was that you could control Gen AI yourself to have her produce a personalized short video about the cruise you'd love to take. Let's say if I wanted to take Geoff on a cruise, I could produce a short video that had Jen Lopez inviting Geoff to go with me, talking about the kinds of fun things we could do, and I could send that out to him and he could watch it and go, yeah, cool, I want to come with you on a cruise. So the campaign used essentially
Can we leave Ben at home?
What was that?
Can we leave Ben Affleck at home?
We can. That was designed, obviously, you use generative AI to do some revoicing and some reconfiguration of the video for mouthing different phrases and so on and so forth in a way that was brand safe, very controlled. According to the brand, the campaign generated over 1,000 bookings. Now, whether that's better or worse than a campaign without generative AI, it's hard to say, obviously, right?
Right.
It could have been on the strength of the creative idea. It could have been on the strength of Jennifer Lopez herself. It could have just been cruise season. But certainly they considered this to be an effective campaign, and it's certainly a legitimate way for a brand to use the same technologies that are being used by deep fake malicious actors to turn celebrities into something more interactive and engaging for their audiences. Another similar campaign out of India, actually, that we wrote about was from Cadbury. It was called Not Just a Cadbury Ad. And what Cadbury wanted to do was obviously sell chocolate, but at the same time, they knew a lot of their mom and pop retailers across India were struggling with the economy, with sales. They were still kind of facing post-COVID doldrums. And they wanted to be sure that they weren't just selling chocolate, but also supporting their local community of retailers. So the idea was that you could have the sort of top-tier Bollywood celebrity who was a spokesperson for the brand produce a highly customized television style ad. They were meant to run the internet, but it looked like a TV spot with top tier talent, high end production, where he was essentially promoting not just Cadbury chocolate, but your store by name for the kinds of things your store also sold. Like, hey,
Right.
if you're looking for shoes, you want to go to this store. By the way, while you're there, they also have Cadbury at the counter, that kind of thing.
Right.
So store owners and their customers created 130,000 different ads. According to the agency, and this was up for a Clio, I'm not sure if it won or not, but according to the agency, the campaign drove a 35% increase in business and attributed something like 70,000 or more in earned media PR style value, right? So again, the same idea, relatively simple implementation of celebrity talent with revoicing and some video AI to make it look convincing to really pull something off that was unique and differentiated and engaging for the consumer.
Sure. So, I mean, I think it's interesting. Like, both are very positive and have done well for the brand and show what creative can do. And I think it's kind of more, to me, it points to the value of these tools as a creative set of executions, right? But it's really
Absolutely.
clearly well written, well thought out. Humans are behind it. And this is just another pathway to do this
Yeah.
intelligently. And we've seen
Absolutely.
this with other brands on a static side with like Heinz and Coca-Cola. I mean, are the
Sure.
obvious two that everybody brings up. But also, we do have a Blaze coming out where we're looking at generative AI to replicate humans, and it is one of the topics in there. And there are brands that do it intelligently, and I think the ones that are doing it well are focusing on what makes them special, right? Like, why would people
Absolutely.
want to go on a Virgin tour? Yeah, I want to go to islands, and wouldn't it be cool if there's a celeb there? Maybe it's J Lo. If it's good enough for J Lo, I could do this. This is amazing. It makes me feel like I'm a rock star. That's awesome, And of course, anybody who's got a string in their heart that understands the difficulties of being an entrepreneur definitely wants to support small businesses. So
Absolutely.
really smart DNA boiled into these ads. Where it goes
Absolutely.
off the rails, which I think we're about to talk about, and maybe I could talk about the Levi one.
Absolutely.
Levi's did this with their models where they basically used women and men of color as diversity models, but then they told everybody we've launched an AI campaign where we're using women and men of color. I think it was women in particular as AI replications, and it caused a huge stake and whiplash for Levi's. And let me be clear, it wasn't that they used AI technology. It's because they were idiots from a PR standpoint. Please forgive me. I love Levi's. I wear them. But that was just a terrible mistake. Like, why would you say that? Like, why would you basically, one, own up to the fact that you don't photograph diverse models and you're a major brand? And two, you're not going to hire them. Instead, you're going to create fake ones.
Right.
That's what they really
I
piss people off.
Yeah.
And you're taking money out of diversity based or background clients,
Yeah, I
or
think that
models.
was
That's a
yeah.
huge issue.
I
Like, these
I
people are underserved.
yeah, I feel like that was the biggest misstep was that they almost presented it as a diversity, equity, and inclusion
Initiative,
play, right?
right?
Where it was like, hey, if you're, first of all, it's greater diversity of our models. Second of all, it's more models in more fits and more styles that look
And
more like
it's
you. Where
saved
they,
us $30,000.
but
It's
that's the
like,
thing, right? And I feel
yeah,
like in some ways, it almost fell prey to the earliest chatter in the marketing community about generative AI, which was really, quite frankly, first and foremost about productivity. How can
yeah,
I write 50 blog posts in the time it used to take me to write five? Which
horrible.
might be a part of the table stakes, right? Everyone is under pressure to do more with less.
But you're
But when
replacing people, right?
Right, but when you explicitly design an initiative to do more with less, or in some cases do more with none, and you kind of end up on the wrong side of popular opinion with that, it becomes problematic, right?
And to be clear, Under Armour does the exact same thing. They just don't tell people that they're shooting diversity, equity, and inclusion models. And to their benefit, they have featured diverse models for the entirety of the brand's existence. It's part of their DNA. So it's not like that they're literally like
Yeah,
replacing people or pulling a BSDI initiative. What they're doing is like, hey, we've got 10 colors of our unstoppable joggers. We took a picture of Joe and now we've replicated it in 5 different colors. And then we have a picture of Billy who, is now in 5 different colors because we're able to use AI to do it.
right, right. Yeah. I think we start to see, I think a divide between the brands and their agencies who think about what the technology can do, right? And run down that course without troubleshooting or wargaming or really thinking about
what their message
implications may
is.
be. And then the brands that actually think about what they should do because they're using the technologies in a way that play to their brand, their positioning, their ethos, their value prop, their purpose, and all of that.
No consumer is going to buy gear of any sort or equipment or cars because you used AI to advertise it.
Right.
They're going to buy it because of the value. We learned this last
100%.
episode on CES. It's the same lesson.
100%. Absolutely. It's just these same lessons over and over and over again. Another example of a brand who I think did a shockingly compelling execution of a surprisingly iffy idea was Volkswagen. Volkswagen in Brazil, they were celebrating the anniversary, I don't know, the 70th, I believe, anniversary of the VW bus. And
poor Volkswagen, they're just having a hard time the past decade.
They produced a spot, very well done spot. And if you watched it and you knew the people involved, the celebrities involved, which these are Brazilian celebrities, not American celebrities. I wouldn't know either of them, but it was a mother and a daughter, both of whom are singing or were singing superstars in the country. The mom passed away in the 80s, I believe. And they brought her back to life, singing a duet with the daughter in like an old VW bus, the new VW bus, 70th anniversary. People found it to be like highly emotional, pulling on the heartstrings, really cool. All of that kind of good stuff. It was a very well done. The AI was flawless in its execution, super believable, really compelling. And it was done with permission. They didn't resurrect this woman out of nowhere. They worked with the family. They had their permission. However, a lot of people who saw the spot found it to be incredibly distasteful, right? They loved this artist back in the 80s. They
kind of like Star Wars: The Return of the Jedi with Princess Leia.
Right. They found it distasteful, and it actually earned the brand an investigation by the national advertising watchdog who, looks to prevent brands from doing things that are misleading or inappropriate. I've heard, through different reporting and whatnot that it was an effective ad, got a lot of viewership, had a fair amount of positive sentiment attached to it, maybe sold some vehicles, but at the same time, it also caused you to scratch your head and say, is it okay for a brand, of all things, a brand, to bring back a celebrity or a personality of any kind, a spokesperson, a regular person, with the objective of selling a product or service, right? It's different if they're going to resurrect Elvis, let's say, and do an Elvis tour.
Or John Lennon.
And it benefits their estate, and it's all about the music, but if you were to bring back John Lennon and it was all about, selling Pepsi Cola, right, that's a different story. And I think that was the issue that a lot of people had with this kind of thing. And I think both this and the Levi's example really point to each brand having their own barometer and knowing, where do I draw the line between what's possible and what's
And reasonable. To be clear, maybe Volkswagen could have worked through that a little bit better and done the same creative with just maybe a disclaimer or two and have totally taken care of that.
Right.
In advance. It would have been a non-issue.
Yeah. And I feel like it kind of, it falls on a different line. I agree with you 100%, and then I think about like the latest Ghostbusters movie, right? Where they bring back, what's his name?
Yeah.
Right. Using, they recreate him with AI and they bring him back and, he's in the movie and it's like this sort of, for people that were really into it.
There's nothing new out of Hollywood. Man.
But it was like this sort of moment of like, oh my God, like this moment of wonder.
Yeah.
Whereas,
damn it. For those of you that are watching, there's apparently a balloon AI associated with my thing, where if I put up the peace sign, balloons fly.
Yeah, that's nice. Was that the peace sign, or was that a 2 and 2?
That's a 2-minute warning because we have a hard stop today, folks. We're going to have to cut it and do the brainer and no brainer. Do you want to how about I just do the no-brainer first?
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, if you're going to use AI in your creative, don't feature your AI as the lead in your creative. Just use it. And think it through. Definitely if there's a disclaimer that needs to be put in place, just say it. It was made with AI. Just be clear. I mean, I think people are expecting it now. It just shouldn't be the thing that you're selling. That's that's it. Ran over.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, then that's almost a brainer because it is good enough to be both the no-brainer and the brainer. But I would say if there is another brainer, right, the sort of good idea here is be prepared. Do your troubleshooting, whether it's to get ahead of a narrative attack or AI media crisis or anything like that. Be prepared for that kind of thing to happen. Don't assume you're in the clear just because you're a big brand. Assume you're actually in the crosshairs because you're a big brand. And of course, that applies as well to your own use of artificial intelligence. Make sure you think through all the angles. You think about, is this responsible or is it just possible? And ensure that anything you do is in line with the core ethos of your brand. And with that, we are going to say goodbye. We're going to roll on out. Do you want to close us for the show, Geoff?
Yes, thanks everybody for your time and attention. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and review. We really appreciate when people do share it, but most importantly, punch that subscribe button. We want you back. Let us know if there's something we can do to make your podcast better. You can find us on the nobrainerpodcast.com site. We do take suggestions. We welcome them. And we're eager to continue to serve you with some fun information. Ciao.